This section gives a brief introduction to the bindings. Any game can be represented as a set of events. Events are different and may cause any kind of reaction in your game. Such reactions are usually called handlers. Most of the time, it's just a method which is invoked when some event occurs. Keeping track of all the handlers can be a tough task. That's why uFrame uses so-called bindings. It allows uFrame to automatically control your handlers when needed. And what's more important, it allows you to set up most popular handlers right from the diagram. So all the boilerplate code will be generated for you and you will never have to look at it. Most of the time, you are going to set up handlers on the view to react to view model changes. So let's see what view bindings can be automatically generated by uFrame. In this example, I have an element called bindings example. It has a few properties: a string, a reference to the little element, and a state machine property. It also has a collection of strings and a collection of little elements. Finally, it has a command. To set up a view binding, you should get to the element view and click this plus button in the bindings header. The binding window consists of three parts. In the left column, you have all the bindings available, separated into different categories. Once you pick up any binding, it will appear on the right side in the bindings to add category. And also, you will be able to preview the final state of your view. In this case, I have chosen simple property changed binding from the standard property bindings category. For each of my properties, I always have a binding available in this category. This binding is going to generate a handler. This handler is going to be invoked every time some property is set to the new value. For example, if I create a binding called state changed, whenever my state is set to the new value, this handler is going to be invoked. In this example, VM property references another element called little element. I can also generate a standard binding for this property, and this is a good place to actually instantiate the view of the little element, in case this instance of binding example owns the instance of little element. After you save and compile, you will see that all the bindings have actually appeared here in the list. Also, in the bindings window, they are now in the current bindings category. And on my view, I have all of those handlers generated for me, so I can immediately start applying some logic here and drawing some fancy stuff. Another special type of property is state machine property. Like here, my state is linked to the simple state machine, which does nothing fancy inside. In the bindings window, I have already used a binding related to state, which comes from standard property bindings category. Let me remove it for a second. And also, let me remove the handler from the view. In the binding window now, I got another binding with the same name, but it comes from a category called state machine property bindings. Unlike the previous guy, this one will generate the handlers for all the states in your state machine. So let me save and compile. And now in my view, I got the handlers for all the states in my state machine, which is very convenient. Whenever you got a command on your element, you can also add a binding for this command. In this case, uFrame will generate a handler which is invoked every time the command is executed on this view model. Finally, we're left with collections. For every collection, you will have a binding available in the category called Standard Collection Binding. This will generate two handlers for you. One is invoked every time when an element is added to the collection. In this case, it's an item of type string. The other handler will be invoked every time you remove something from the collection. This is how it looks like in the code. So you can easily respond to any item added to your collection or removed from your collection. Also, if your collection refers to the type of another element, like here I have a collection of little elements, you have another binding available for you in the category called View Collection Binding. This one will generate 3 handlers for you. You will have edit and remove handlers, however, those will accept a view-based item. So here you can do anything with a newly instantiated view for the child element. In this case, it's little element. Also, you will have another handler called Create VM Collection View. Here you can create a view of this little element based on a given view model. This is how it looks like in the code. Both edit and removed handler are receiving a view base, which is a mono behavior. And this mono behavior is usually instantiated inside of this method called createVMCollectionView in my case. Whenever a new little element is added to the collection, you have to return an instantiated view here, and you should avoid the base invocation because this returns null. At this point, we got a fully reactive view for the bindings example element. It can instantiate views for the child elements, and it can also react to all the changes in the view model.